Tim Mapes, Chief of Staff to Speaker Madigan, has made repeated inappropriate comments to me and around me, both in the office and on the House floor. I have decided to come forward this morning because we have a serious and pervasive problem in our state government, and I could no longer remain silent about my own mistreatment. My hope is that by coming forward, I can create space for others to do the same. I want to make sure that the workplace environment is better in the futures for our daughters and our sons. We need to force fundamental change, not just lip service, not a quick fix, but real cultural transformation. With that, I'll detail some of my own experiences. In December of 2014, I was participating in a conversation with several of my colleagues in the Speaker's office planning logistics for inauguration. We were discussing the proper drop-off location for the judge at the inauguration ceremony. In the middle of the conversation, Tim Mapes said, completely out of nowhere, that I needed to make sure that I was not showing my pink bra to the judge during Inauguration Day, because he knows how the girls who work on the second floor like to leave little to the imagination. I am part of the staff located on the second floor of the Stratton building. I was stunned and very uncomfortable. As anyone can tell you, I never dress provocatively, but even if I did, this would have been a completely inappropriate comment. I asked him, "Why would you say that, and what does that have to do with this conversation?" And he just walked off. A second incident took place in September of 2015. I had been approached by a young woman who had previously worked with me in the clerk's office. She was being sexually harassed by a member of the House Democratic Caucus and had come to talk to me because she was afraid. I spoke to Mr. Mapes about the details of the situation, told him I was concerned, and asked if he could talk to the representative and tell him to stop. Mr. Mapes then said to me, "Are you reporting the situation because you are upset the representative isn't paying attention to you?" I was astounded at this comment and continued to advocate for the young woman's safety. Another colleague was present, and that person was also taken aback by the comment. I pushed back assertively and told Mr. Mapes that he needed to take action because I said, "You know now," and he again walked off. A third incident took place just a few weeks ago. I was in the House well preparing for the start of session. Mr. Mapes approached me and another colleague and started a conversation about another individual. He discussed how the individual wouldn't do something because the person was married. Without full context, I did not understand what Mr. Mapes was saying. He then looked at me and said, "We know that doesn't matter around here, does it, Sherri?" And I said something to the effect of, "Yes, this place does have a reputation." He then said, "Now I'm not implying that you are running around on Jim. Jim is my husband." I was again stunned, confused, and uncomfortable. My colleague standing next to me said something to try to diffuse the conversation. He then said to my colleague, "So you're implying that Sherri is running around on Jim?" My colleague said no, and he was also stunned. Later, I turned to my colleague and said, "Why did that conversation take place?" My colleague said he found the conversation very awkward and uncomfortable, but not unusual. My colleague also noted that he did not understand why Mr. Mapes continued to stare at me throughout the interaction. I agreed with him because I was very uncomfortable. In April of this year, Mr. Mapes came on the floor, and I heard him say to a colleague, "Are you going to sex training today?" jokingly referring to the sexual harassment training. And this moment, when that training is so important, the Chief of Staff was making light of such a critical matter. On the day of the State of the State address, everyone in Springfield was wearing black in solidarity with the Time's Up movement. Mr. Mapes showed up to work wearing a navy blue suit, and his comment was, "I'm wearing blue today because there's not a woman on the House floor that would want me to tell them what to wear." It was clear that he viewed this as a way for him to thumb his nose at the entire Time's Up movement. A final story that I'd like to share. In spring of 2013, former State Representative Ken Duncan approached the House well and said to me and another woman, "I want to take both of you home and see which one will be the naughtiest." I reported the incident. I later heard that when Mr. Mapes was told about the incident, his response is that it would blow over. He had to be forced to address the situation by a staff member. While the incident was ultimately addressed, it later became clear to me that Mr. Mapes wouldn't have taken appropriate action to address Representative Duncan's comments had it been left to his sole discretion. The entire incident would have been swept under the rug. These are just a sample of the many stories I could tell from my years of work in the Speaker's office. This is very difficult for me.